there. Welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the course of the hour, we'll run through the business news stories you need to know about from the continent and beyond. But first, a quick run through the markets. Now, there were some pretty fascinating developments in the payment space in Nigeria today. Airtel and MTN subsidiaries both got approval in principle to operate a service bank business. Both firms are still working with the CBN to meet conditions for an operating license and to start operations. MTN shares in Johannesburg were 13% higher after the news hit the wires. Airtel Africa shares in London were also 11% higher on the day. Most of the indices we track here had marginal gains this week. JC Top 40 about half a percentage point higher, giving up midweek gains. And Nasdaq does continue a strong run this week, however, up 3.4% just after 15:30 GMT. Here's what's coming up tonight. We'll assess the impact of the latest fighting between Ethiopia's federal military and the combined forces of the TPLF and the Oromo Liberation Army. South Africa announces successful bidders in its latest round of renewable energy projects. And an in-depth look at the business of gaming in Africa on TechSpot, our new special segment on tech and innovation across the continent. All that and more is in the pipeline for you tonight. But let's start in Ethiopia. Thousands of nationals across the country converged at a stadium in the capital, Addis Ababa, to show their support for new federal military recruits. The event came as Ethiopia's government urged citizens to defend themselves against advancing rebel fighters from the Tigray region. Now, the year-long war has killed thousands of people, displaced at least 2.5 million ever since it started on the 3rd of November 2020. The government declared a national state of emergency on Tuesday. In her address to the crowd, the Addis Ababa mayor, Adene Kabebe, said there's no victory without sacrifice.
Let's all be organized, guarding our environment, guarding the neighborhood, the police and the defense forces. Work day and night. Don't get tired. We are not allowed to get tired at this critical time.
Let's get to the latest developments on this from Girum Chala, who's joining us now live from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. So, Girum, what are the latest changes on the front in fighting between the Federal Army and the combined forces of the TPLF and the Oromo fighters?
Good evening, Rama. In the north, especially in the two strategic towns, which TPLF is now in control of, Kombolcha and Desert towns, there is a serious battle going on since the last few days, and it is now continued. The Ethiopian National Defense Force have reported that they are now engaging with the TPLF force with a plan of withdrawing them away from the two cities. From the TPLF side, they are also promising to charge to the capital, Addis Ababa. As you've said, they have formed an alliance with the Oromo Liberation Army itself. So we can report to you that war has continued in especially the two battlefronts, and also small battles have been reported in the Afar regional state. In Addis Ababa, since the declaration of the state of emergency, there is calm in the city. Of course, there are checkpoints here and there, police randomly checking cars and individuals. Unless and otherwise that's called an issue, life continues to be normal, Rama.
What more do we know about this political grouping that's being set up between the TPLF, the Oromo Liberation Army, and at least, I believe, 7 other groups?
Well, we have heard, Rama, from the United States, a formation of a new political grouping in which majorly the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front representatives, and the Oromo Liberation Front or Army representatives are included in. As you know, the idea is in case there is a plan, in case the plan of removing the current government under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed succeeds, these individuals which came together, the Federalist and the non-Federalist force, as they might be called, they will be taking over. That's the plan. But in general terms, the reaction from people we try to speak to here in Addis Ababa seem to be outraged, most of the people, by the way, because the current government, as you remember, a few months back, has been elected by the majority of the people. A government has been formed in September, in which the Prime Minister and his cabinet were also approved by the Parliament. So this alliance seems to be doubted by the people here in general terms from its inception. But yes, an alliance, a political alliance is formed, and we shall wait and see what they are going to do with it in the next weeks or months, Rama.
So the U.S. Special Envoy has been in the country. What has emerged from his trip into Addis Ababa?
Jeffrey Feltman, the special envoy of President Joe Biden to the East Africa region, he repeatedly came to Ethiopia to more specifically discuss the issue of the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam, and now this time around to discuss a peaceful resolution, as they said, of the ongoing war between the TPLF forces and the Ethiopian National Defense Force. Feltman reportedly has made different individuals, authorities to be more specific, including the foreign minister himself, and they're trying to broker peace between the two parties. So far, there is no official communication, by the way, when it comes to the outcome of U.S. top diplomats' visit to Addis Ababa, but we know that they are pushing for a peaceful resolution. They are calling the two parties, any party involved in the war, to take down arms and come for a round table discussion. So we have to wait and see again to report official communication from the U.S. Embassy or from the government side, Rama.
One last question for you, Girum. Where is Eritrea in this phase of the conflict? Has there been any formal indication from Asmara that they're going to sit this out and not send troops across the border into Tigray?
To be direct, we don't know really the official stand of the government of Eritrea or their troops. But on the other hand, different communications from Eritrean officials tell you that they are not really happy with the TPLF. Let me give you a few background there. Decades back, there was a war between Ethiopia and Eritrea, which claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. And since then, the relationship between the two countries was really not something enjoyable until Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed 3+ years back came and broke that circle and brought the two countries back together again with a visit of him to Asmara and President Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea to Addis Ababa. That has fixed the relationship, borders opened, flight resumed, and many things. But still, the Eritrean government kept an issue, and TPLF also has done the same, keeping issue a kind of attitude between the two. The animosity was always there. So when the war began just a year ago, Eritrea, of course, Eritrean forces have involved in this country, and we have seen what happened afterwards. But at the moment in time, the communication that we hear here and there, unconfirmed reports, by the way, that Eritrea is still not happy. Its officials are not happy with TPLF's advancement to what they have done so far, or even their promise to the capital Addis Ababa. We don't really know if they are going to directly involve, because there are no official reports of such activities going on at the moment. But we do know that Eritrean authorities are not happy with the actions of TPLF or OLA, Rama.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Girum Chala there live in Addis Ababa. Now, some good news on the medical front. An experimental pill to treat COVID developed by Pfizer has cut the risk of hospitalization or death by at least 89% in vulnerable adults. That's according to the clinical trial data that the company made public today. The drug is called Paxlovid. It's intended for use soon after symptoms develop in people at high risk of severe disease. This comes a day after the UK medicines regulator approved a similar treatment from another pharmaceutical company, Merck. Now, Pfizer says it stopped trials early as the initial results we were getting were quite positive. Technically speaking, the Pfizer drug is a protease inhibitor. It works by blocking off an enzyme that the virus needs in order to multiply. When taken alongside a low dose of another antiviral called ritonavir, it stays in the body for longer. 3 pills have to be taken twice a day for 5 days, according to the test that they did run. Pfizer will, of course, be submitting interim trial data results for this particular pill to the FDA. Now, the Kenyan shilling has been on a steady losing streak the entire week in what analysts and forex traders are attributing to a combination of strong dollar demand, particularly from oil importers, but also weak dollar inflows as well. On Friday, the Kenyan shilling was quoted at a mean rate of 111.55 against the American dollar. The currency has gone down by at least 0.28% this week alone, if you compare Friday's mean rates to Monday's trading mean of 111.24. Analysts are citing Kenya's high external dollar debt. The country, of course, remember, has over $70 billion in debt at the moment. Half of that, roughly, is essentially external. The country's anemic economic growth, the high import bill, the subtle dollarization of some transactions. for the weakening trends that we're seeing in the local unit. Saudi Arabia recently deposited about $3 billion in Egypt's central bank. It has also extended the maturity of another deposit of $2.3 billion. Now, these deposits are aimed at helping Egypt to shore up its foreign currency reserves, which stood at about $40.8 billion at the end of September. Here's Yasser Hakim with the data.
Egypt's foreign reserves had taken a hit last year, dropping by 23% from March to June 2020, as the state tried to sustain the economy from the economic effects of the coronavirus pandemic.
Most expenses went to the health sector, more than its initial budget. Just like most countries, there were huge expenditures to protect the economy from the effects of COVID-19. Some nations suffered, but the economic reforms Egypt had undertaken before has protected it from the damage caused by the coronavirus pandemic.
The central bank has pumped billions of dollars into the market to keep the different economic sectors and industries operating throughout the pandemic year. It has also tapped the bond market, the IMF, World Bank, and other lenders to fund its emergency plans. The latest figures announced on November 1st shows reserves at $40.5 billion, up from $35 billion a year ago. And the Saudi deposit is seen as a further boost.
The merit of this deposit is that it offers a diversity in the borrowing mechanisms. The Gulf nations' deposits as well impose less costs on Egypt than foreign loans. In turn, if the world falls in an inflationary recession, this will undoubtedly affect the Arab markets and Egypt. Therefore, such deposits help you to be ready with strong reserves to face the global inflation and higher costs.
Although Egypt's foreign currency reserves have not yet reached the pre-pandemic levels of $45 billion, but the central bank says it's more than healthy. Reserves cover the North African country's basic needs for 9 months, while the average international rate is 3 months only. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
All right, then a quick run through some company headlines. Kenya's Solar Freeze is among the winners of this year's Ashton Prize. Solar Freeze won the Humanitarian Energy Award for providing sustainable and affordable refrigeration services for food and medicine in refugee camps during an award ceremony held on the sidelines of the ongoing COP26 summit in Glasgow, Scotland. Kenya's Cocoa Networks was also recognized for supplying low-emissions fuel made from waste from the sugar industry. MTN, the Joburg-based mobile service provider, is offering bonus shares to Kenyan investors keen to buy into the MTN Uganda IPO. The initial public offering is worth an estimated $250 million. It's considered to be the second largest in East Africa after that of Kenya Safaricom back in 2008. Seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? 4.4 billion shares are on offer to Kenyan investors, priced at about 6 shillings 25 cents a share. That's roughly 5.6 US cents. The IPO runs from the 11th of October to the 22nd of November. Google is now taking applications for the 7th cohort of its Google for Startups Accelerator program. The program is open to tech startups in 17 countries. So far, 82 firms from 17 African countries have taken part and successfully raised more than $117 million in funding. They've created over 2,800 jobs on the continent while they're at it. And finally, media reports in the US say that Boeing investors have reached an agreement with current and former company officers to settle a lawsuit over the flawed safety review of the 737 MAX. The proposed settlement is expected to be filed in the coming days in a court in Delaware, subject to approval by a judge. The deal will likely include provisions to increase internal safety reviews. The monetary portion of the agreement alone could be worth some $250 million. Insurers are on the hook for that one. That's a run through your company headlines. You're watching Global Business Africa. Time for a short break. Here's what's coming up. Youth climate activists lead protests in Glasgow to push for action from global leaders. And South Africa's announced successful bidders in its latest round of renewable energy contracts.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sumitra Naidu. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Welcome back. The COP26 summit in the Scottish city of Glasgow does continue. Friday's focus turns to the youth and public empowerment. Both the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the COP26 President Alok Sharma have referred to the anger and concern of young people about climate change and the apparent inaction in the face of that. Thousands of young activists, led by climate activist Greta Thunberg and Uganda's Vanessa Nakate, held protests today. CGTN's Andrew Wilson gives us a wrap on the debates at the ongoing climate conference in Scotland.
First trees, then cash, and now coal. Nearly 40 countries have joined a group pledge to tackle and end their reliance on the dirtiest greenhouse fuel. The new members are significant, among others Poland, Vietnam, Chile, and Indonesia. The US, Australia, China, and India have yet to sign up.
Today, I think we can say that the end of coal is in sight. The progress we've seen over the past 2 years would have seemed like a lofty ambition when we took on the COP presidency back in 2019. Who would have thought back then that today we're able to say that we're choking off international coal financing, or that we would see a shift away from domestic coal power?
Countries like Indonesia and Vietnam will be hard pushed to make such an early transition. There'll be a considerable cost.
Okay, if we want to deliver climate change commitment in a credible way, let's talk about money. Let's talk about plan. Let's talk about the consequence.
And that's where the technical teams here in Glasgow justify their existence, arguing with each other, crunching the numbers, horse trading with their economies, pushing back against reluctance. If cash is a problem, we'll find some more. If targets are an issue, we'll conjure up something new. COP26 is all about creating a brand new framework, way more ambitious than Paris, but still feasible enough to keep everyone around the table. The Americans, while still avoiding a coal commitment, are selling optimism.
It's unheard of that we actually got every country to agree that now 1.5 is the challenge, not just well below 2 degrees. So that's enormous progress, folks, but obviously if we have 65% in, we have 35% still out. And we can't do it without that 35%.
There have been questions also about the private sector pledge on funding. How, some are asking, when the UN Special Envoy can talk about trillions of dollars, is it so hard to raise $100 billion to support the developing world?
We do not need more carbon.
And as if to add to the urgency, new data suggests that greenhouse emissions, mostly from coal, are up 5% on last year. Nevertheless, the step forward on coal will be hard to reverse. As COP26 lurches on, the momentum remains broadly positive. Andrew Wilson, CGTN, Glasgow.
From Glasgow, let's head over to South Africa. The country has announced 25 successful bidders in its latest round of renewable energy projects. Now, the independent power producers were selected in the government's 5th bid window, essentially giving these companies a green light to go out there and now start building solar and wind power plants that feed power back into the grid. For years now, the state-owned utility, Eskom, has been struggling to provide a steady, reliable supply of electricity. South Africa's government is hoping to supplement supply shortfalls with renewables, even as it's looking to replace over 40 gigawatts of coal-fired power plants. Sumitra Naidu has that story.
While independent power producers have been given the go-ahead to feed the grid, it will take some time before there's enough power to stem Eskom's ongoing load shedding.
Load shedding has definitely been quite severe, and 2021 has been the most severe year we've had so far in terms of number of hours that we've been load shed. That obviously points to a crisis in the power sector. Unfortunately, this crisis was not really taken that seriously until quite recently, when we had the risk mitigation procurement program. Irony is that we've had 6 years of almost nothing happening, when we could have been procuring and building a lot of new capacity.
There is relief that the process is moving along. There are, though, some terms and conditions that are being ironed out to ensure a fair and equitable rollout. Black participation has been emphasized.
A total of 34% shareholding by black people in IPPs was achieved against the target of 30%. So the DMRE not only requires participation by black South Africans at project level, but also requires participation across the entire renewable energy value chain.
The department was pleased that the latest bid window attracted more female participation.
For the first time, we introduced the target of 5% ownership by black women in projects. It is very encouraging that we have already achieved 7% commitment. The request for proposal required projects to commit at least 40% local content during construction, which has always been a shortcoming with renewable energy.
South Africa wants the bidders to bring their projects to a financial close in the next 6 months and to commercial closure within the next 3 years. These projects are expected to add over 2,500 watts to the national grid.
So the successful bidders are largely being led by international companies. But to be clear, South Africans own on average 49% of the awarded projects. Most often these are BEE companies and community trusts.
New bid windows 6 and 7 are expected to follow this round shortly. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, if you had to do a random guess and try and figure out what the main source of emissions in Kenya is, for a lot of people, transport might come at the top of that list. But it actually isn't. You see, over 75% of Kenyan households still cook with either firewood or charcoal. So combine that with deforestation, and that accounts for the bulk of the country's greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, according to the Environment Ministry, the continued use of biomass for fuel also contributes to the estimated 14,000 Kenyans who die every year because of air pollution. CGTN's Penina Karibe went to Kitui County in eastern Kenya, where options for affordable, low-emission fuels are being explored.
Kitui County in Kenya is known for its long dry spells. Categorized by the government as a semi-arid region, it receives little rainfall annually, which exposes the county to frequent droughts. But besides food insecurity, the county is battling another challenge: access to clean cooking energy. Mary Katei welcomes us to her home. She's preparing lunch for her family. As she settles into the kitchen, she explains to me the challenges she has encountered using firewood as her primary source of cooking energy.
I used to use the 3-stone firewood stove. We would walk very far looking for firewood. That was a big challenge. Secondly, I had to carry the firewood on my back.
Besides that, there was the financial cost. She would buy a tree at a cost of roughly $5, then pay about $2 to have the tree chopped. Transportation of the wood to the house would cost $4. The firewood would last her 4 months, and the cycle would begin all over again. But it wasn't just her pocket that was dented. Her health and that of the children deteriorated. They suffered from constant headaches and other flu-like symptoms due to the frequent exposure to smoke. But Mary's story is not unique in this county. Sites such as this one are common as households struggle to access cooking energy.
Kitui being semi-arid areas, livelihood options are very minimal. So most of the households went into charcoal production. Before the current regime 2017, Kitui was supplying Nairobi with charcoal. So a lot of trees had been felled to produce charcoal. And then we realized that progressively, firewood has become not very accessible.
In 2014, Caritas, the development wing of the Catholic Church, stepped in. They trained local artisans on building the rocket stove, a permanent two-burner cooker that was an improvement from the commonly used three-stone firewood stove. Unlike the three-stone stove, it uses less firewood and has proved popular with locals. It is currently being used in 18,000 households in Kitui County. But even though it lessens the burden of firewood, users such as Mary say it still exposes them to a lot of smoke. To address those concerns, Caritas launched a pilot program last month to provide electric pressure cookers to 36 households connected to the national grid. And for those without power, LPG was used as an alternative, while another 40 households received charcoal-burning stoves named Jikokoa, a Kiswahili word that loosely translates to energy saving. For Mary, the charcoal-burning stove has been a tremendous improvement on her life.
This energy-saving charcoal stove is good. It uses very little charcoal. It is also friendly to our pockets because we buy one bag of charcoal at $9, and that bag can last up to 3 to 4 months.
Being connected to the national grid means Mary has another option, the electric pressure cooker.
It uses very little electricity. During the training we had on how to use it, there was a man who told us he cooked chicken for 15 minutes and used 0.2 kilowatt hours. That's very cheap. I can't compare it to this electric cooker I was using before. It consumed a lot of electricity.
It has become her favorite for various reasons. Her husband agrees with her.
It has many advantages for me. These days I cook. Before, I could not do that because of the smoke and the heat produced by the firewood. But with a pressure cooker, I can even go and do other things and I will find the food ready.
The comparative findings of the project have enlightened the community here on the benefits of using clean cooking energy.
So that was a pilot project which we look forward to amplifying it across the county. And men are also getting now closer to cooking, which was previously thought it is a women agenda, but now men can also cook and serve their family. That bringing more love to the family. That is what we are saying these days.
It's a humble beginning towards the use of clean energy, but a journey that has encouraged many here that it can indeed be done. Penina Karibe, CGTN in Kitui County, Kenya.
As you see there, Kenya, of course, is right on the front lines of dealing with climate change. Here's a conversation with the country's Chief Administrative Secretary in the Environment Ministry.
First and foremost, I think we need to let you know that nationally we have done the policy. We have an act of parliament that talks about climate change, and therefore we have a directorate. We have a council chaired by the president, and every ministry now has a desk on climate change. In the counties, majority of them now have passed Climate Change Act, and at the ward, and they put aside 2% of their development budget, in which then they give it to communities to come up with climate resilience projects. And we are hoping very soon there will be big, I think 100 billion money that will be set aside to support those plans of the counties to help communities build. That will be at ward level. I think the major challenge has been now then resourcing it. And the government has now, with the counties going, in Treasury, there's a unit on climate change that is looking to look at all the avenues of funding. And therefore, hopefully, very soon it will go up.
How is the government promoting the use of energy-saving technologies in rural Kenya?
We have KEDLI, which is promoting all sorts of technologies. We've had the whole of civil society working on that. But Ministry of Energy has been experimenting a whole range of technologies in which they want people to adapt. More recently, I came across where they're giving schools that technology so that they use less firewood and all that. Now you remember the GCOs that are energy saving. The other one is the policy that has been brought by Ministry of Energy, where they wanted gas to become very cheap. It's not yet fully realized and available to the lower cadre. They did an experimental one through National Oil, and I think they are now getting the lessons. So hopefully more people will move to a cheaper gas at the household level than firewood.
What challenges is the government facing in helping communities adapt to this changing climate, and also just to mitigate or caution them from these effects of climate change?
I think the major one, which is a budgetary and financial constraint, because in addition to coming with mitigation basically is we're trying to do our 2 billion tree planting in order to reach the 10%. That will be under the climate change, will be considered as mitigation. So that requires huge resources. Yet at the same time, we're supposed to adapt to it. We're supposed to finance the droughts, the floods, and all the bridges that are washed. We're supposed to make our bridges and our roads climate proof from now, because we know climate change is with us and the weather variability will be coming. So now we're having drought. I think it will be changed by the floods. And when that happens, then we lose quite a bit of our infrastructure.
Let's briefly step outside the continent now. Foreign food companies are not just expanding the presence at the ongoing China International Import Expo, but they're also designing and rolling out products particularly for Chinese consumers. Zhu is at the event.
The food exhibition is spread over an area of over 3,000 square meters. More than 20 well-known foreign enterprises from countries such as Australia, New Zealand, France, and the US are exhibiting their products. There are also some well-known names such as Nestle who are looking to make further inroads in China. David Fang is Nestle's Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Sustainability in China. He says the multinational company is looking to constantly improve the standard of the products it imports to China, with an eye on the new spending trends of Chinese consumers.
Especially after the COVID-19. For example, Chinese consumers, they are demanding products with more healthy, more greener, organic, and more sustainable. So this all the elements how Nestle we tackle this challenge and also a big opportunities. So we believe CIE is a great example. The first one is NHW, short for nutrition, health, and wellness. Yeah, no matter you can say it's nutrition or it's the chocolate or it's water, it's all features the nutrition and health.
Meat products maker Tyson Foods, one of the largest meat suppliers in the world, is also bullish on opportunities in China. Zhou Chuan, public relations head of Tyson Foods China, says the company is planning to launch several new products in the retail market. Its prime steak, which is already a bestseller in Chinese five-star hotels and Michelin restaurants, will soon be available in major supermarkets and other upmarket retailers.
U.S. prime beef has the highest ratings among American meat products. It accounts for only about 2% of the total annual output of U.S. beef. It is very rare, but we found that with the improvement of Chinese consumers' living standards and dietary structure, the products have huge market potential in China. We have now designed our first prime steak products for the retail market, especially targeting Chinese customers.
Many foreign food companies have also moved their production line to China. This move not only provides localized products to cater to their Chinese customers, but also helps boost the local planting and farming industries at the same time.
Back to 1980s, China, we don't have any coffee plants. Yeah, because China is a tea country. We are not a coffee country. And Nestle started to exploring, which part of the location suitable for coffee plantation. Back to 1980s, we found out, Yunnan province. Then, we sent a lot of expertise. They work side by side with local farmers for generations and generations. Nowadays, China already the number 10 largest coffee bean producer in the world.
Industry experts concur that there is no platform more ideal than the CIE to gather consumer feedback, especially from professional buyers for their newly developed products. The expo has also broadened their understanding about the Chinese market in a very efficient way. Zhu, CGTN, Shanghai.
International luxury brands are also showcasing the latest collections in the personal product side of the CIIE, turning it into one of the most glittering sections of the event. CGTN's Zhang Shishuan has that story.
High fashion with images of exclusivity and pretty hefty price tags is a hotspot every year at the CIIE's Consumer Good Exhibition section, where international big brands have been scaling up their presence. They include US-based luxury conglomerate Tapestry. It's at the Import Expo for the third time, and this year has brought all its 3 brands and is holding a global debut for its latest handbags and boots. China's growing middle class is the key to the company's business.
We look at maybe 10 years ago, the Chinese customer was incredibly always curious about fashion and luxury. But now, I think the Chinese customer moved from being somebody who was learning about fashion and luxury to somebody who is really driving the key innovation. So that's the place where you really need to be avant-garde and incredibly innovative to meet the highly sophisticated and more sophisticated Chinese customers. We rarely see nearly boundless opportunities 5 years from now. And we believe that providing exquisite product at a price which will be approachable for as many people as possible is a promise for a great future for us.
Be sure it understands that future. The brand will be holding a panel talk with students from Donghua University. The idea is to integrate more Chinese elements into its new designs, in itself an illustration of its confidence and commitment to the China market. While luxury fashion brands like Tapestry, Kering, and Richemont have become regulars at the Import Expo, some high-end home appliance makers are also learning what the event can do for their business opportunities in China. Matte Black entered the China market last August, just after it made its debut at the CIIE in 2019. This time, it has brought its new TV model with a premium sound system. The set sells for almost 430,000 yuan, and it has already received plenty of attention.
We've seen great future prospects with the growing number of high net worth individuals. They are pursuing a better quality of life. We can handle at most 5 orders a month, and we are already booked into next year. So the consumption capacity of high net worth individuals in the luxury TV business is obvious.
The COVID-19 outbreak has brought tremendous challenges to the global supply chain caused by the severe imbalance between the demand and supply sides. And experts say the luxury consumer goods sector is anything but an exception.
Traditionally, we all know the luxury in terms of supply chain is heavily reliant on Europe. Particularly, they have a lot of manufacturing facility in Italy. But because of the pandemic, the international shipment is not that convenient and the factories get locked down. But at the same time, look at China and Asia. The demand side actually is booming very fast with a lot of new store has been opened.
So the key lies in the quick response and product delivery, as well as the capability to handle the surge in orders. And the e-commerce business that has been booming in China may well be an effective solution. The participation of luxury brands at the ongoing Double 11 Shopping Festival reached a record high. More than 200 luxury brands joined the shopping carnival on Tmall.
All the leading brands is looking for actively partnership with local giant e-commerce players. For example, we see the JD partnership with Fairfax. They even integrated their luxury brands, so-called Top Life, into the Farfetch, and to enjoy what they having the world-class traffic, but also to leverage the Jingdong in terms of technology advantage, as well as the supply chain capability. So the joint venture, this kind of deep strategic partnership, actually goes a long way.
Zhong says China will account for half of all global luxury sales by 2025. The high participation of big brands at the CIIE makes that obvious. The country is leading the market in both style and sense. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
All right, then a quick update on commodities. After OPEC Plus rejected effectively the calls for a much faster rise in output and stuck to its guns with that scheduled rise of 400,000 barrels a day of output in December, the key question now is what the US will do. Might we see the release of some stocks from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, for example? Baker Hughes rig count data for the week, of course, does point to an extra 6 oil rigs coming in online in the US. 60% of the active rigs in the country, of course, are right in the Permian Basin. Now then, let's join Uche Okoronko for an in-depth look at the business of gaming in Africa on TechSpot. It's our new segment featuring tech and innovation across the continent.
Hi there and welcome to Tech Spot, where we sniff out the groundbreaking new concepts in technology disrupting traditional sectors. I'm Ucheo Korongwo, and this week we're taking you into the world of gaming in Africa. Now, if you haven't already noticed, digital media consumption in Africa is growing at an unprecedented pace. And tapping into this, video game developers have now become major competition for television and movies on the continent. And the increasing penetration of mobile applications has now opened up the gaming market even further to a whole new range of new players that are providing local platforms for internationally produced games, and of course the creation of games that resonate with local fans. Well, here in Kenya, GWA Studios is building a developer hub for video game creators, players and distributors, and TechSpot is now taking a look at what the platform has to offer.
The year is 2062. In this post-apocalyptic future, the world has gone dark and grown barren. Climate change has washed away the megacities of Europe, and the only hope lies in Africa, the only place where the sun still shines and mankind can survive. Ophelia, granddaughter of Lake Turkana's revolution leader Lion Lapao, and autistic genius Ulysses, embark on a mythical quest to save mankind in pursuit of a brighter future for their unborn child. This is the premise of Usoni, one of Africa's few interactive story-based video games. Inspired by what was initially a TV documentary about Lake Turkana's El Molo ethnic tribe, and then a script for a film adaptation of the story, developers at Kenya's GWA Studios are creating a gameplay experience that mimics internationally known adventure games such as Blade Runner or Far Cry New Dawn.
Africa is just getting started within that industry. But what I'm very hopeful about is the global community is always open to collaborations, sharing information, working within the continent to be able to develop story-driven games that are focused on Africa, because there's a hunger for local African content globally, and people are trying to tap into that, whether it's through support or local game developers developing within the continent. So I think it's looking very good.
Max Musau heads the team of young creatives, visual artists and gaming enthusiasts at GWA Studios. He says because Africa remains marginalized in the global video game industry, GWA made a conscious decision to explore unique African story-driven games.
Drink. It's water. Real water.
I think COVID has really brought the attention now to home entertainment, and we took the advantage to ramp up our esports events, simply because people had a lot more time in the house and they're looking for more engagement. And it has also shifted the focus also now to the African developer, and is forcing them now to kind of develop more games more often and at a higher quality as well. So that focus that has shifted into home entertainment has really accelerated a lot of things within the world of gaming.
An entrepreneur and avid gamer, Max started off with the goal of bringing tech communities together and lowering the barriers to learning technology and code. In 2020, he and his team founded GWA to kick off the Usoni project, recruiting a dozen young professionals. By early 2021, the first part of Usoni was released for PC and Android.
We are a very young team. We're about just coming up on our first year. Usoni has been our first focus. This year we have one other development and one other game we have in our production development, which is called Michi Michi, which is around the story of Wangari Maathai.
GOA Studios is part of a renaissance in Africa's game development space, where young developers are finding opportunities to stretch their skills and also earn a stable income through the digital economy. Developers like Telvin, who is now working on the second version of the Usoni game, which will be developed in full 3D. He's using some of the latest software in game development. Unreal Engine software seamlessly blends live and digital content, integrating computer graphics and live action footage in real time.
That's good. Hardware is always kind of like the choke point. Hardware is very expensive to be able to get a development PC. A lot of developers struggle around the concept of how do I get the right hardware that's able to run, create games and edit the games in a very comfortable and that brings out the best gaming experience.
Telvin is part of a new crop of homegrown talent that is culturally and technically aligned to the needs of the African market.
It's been a really interesting process, especially how I looked at it was adopting the way movies adopt novels. So that's how we approached it, because we were trying to see how to adapt this book into a game. Knowing what makes you tick as a gamer it really helped. Things like God of War really helped in, you see when you have two characters, having complex characters in a game. That's what God of War inspired us to do, having complex characters, because they said just having a simple story is enough, and our simple story was a journey. Ophelia is moving from Europe to Africa. The first step was now to decide what aspects we want to be gameplay. That means that the sessions that the players are playing, and those sessions we want it to be cinematic, where they're just watching the story and cover.
Do you have your passes? We haven't even.
This is just the beginning for Usoni. Part 2 and 3 of the game, which are scheduled for release in 2022, will delve deeper into the visual and narrative potential of the story.
We've decided now to change it up, just to make the story more personal. So we just decided to do it 3D. And I get most story-based games are usually in 3D. I think that's a decision. That's why we chose that, because there's a certain factor that 3D gives you in terms of telling stories that's really makes you as a player more engaged to it.
It's a very popular game.
But while GOA is slowly finding its place in the world of game developers, the company is quickly gaining ground in the fast-growing, major money-making competitive video gaming space. It is tapping into Africa's new obsession with mobile gaming through its esports platform.
I need to get 2 kills. So our esports platform currently has 750 plus gamers, mostly on mobile. We mostly focus on Call of Duty Mobile. We hold events every month with prizes from $200 all the way up to $1,000.
Skeptic, the OG. Through the time.
So we partnered with Activision to be able to host our own local competitions. That way we can collaborate with them to be able to get our players at the global level. Still, there's a lot of ways to go in terms of having local servers to reduce kind of the ping time within the games, to allow our local players to compete at a competitive level. But at the moment, the first step is to be able to partner with them and have our players within their ecosystem and benefiting and thriving within their ecosystem.
Despite being a relatively new industry in Kenya, the social online gaming market, which was worth over $20 million in 2018, is expected to more than double by 2023. The reality is video gaming is still an expensive affair. The price of gaming consoles ranges from $200 to $500, knocking out the average young Kenyan. Most local gamers rely on gaming lounges, but that is changing, as research shows that mobile's high penetration rate and portability now dominates the future of gaming. And during the COVID-19 lockdowns, GUA is one of the many African studios taking advantage of the stay-at-home period to build mobile gaming on its esports platform.
We are newcomers, yet the base we chose to appeal to surpassed the people who'd been there before us. I'll be honest, when we started the esports side, we were struggling to find sponsors. We were being turned away at most doors because most people didn't understand exactly what we're doing. Either that, or the feedback we were getting is we're not doing anything new. Yet we went into mobile in a situation where most people weren't even concentrating on mobile gaming. Mobile gaming was not even a thing in 2020. It wasn't a big thing. It took us 3 months only to put an audience of 1,000 gamers in one place where we communicate with them. Then the word of mouth did its own thing. 3 months from March 2020 to around June 2020. Word of mouth did its own thing, and we're, wow, where we are at now.
And according to Max, the growing audience for esports has now caught the attention of Africa's corporates.
So we're working with Safaricom, particularly Safaricom Base at the moment, to provide our content on their platform to be able to generate revenue to kind of support our activities, operations, and grow our price pool as well. So esports content is now a big thing, and we want to distribute this as widely as possible so other ordinary Kenyans can see what opportunities are available as an esports player and what the local esports scene looks like. There is a little bit of hesitance on the part of corporates to support African mobile gaming, but because of the growth, I don't think they can't afford to ignore us for very long. As long as we kind of keep on our efforts, keep climbing up the ladder, with our visibility, I think we'll be able to win them over to our side. But the problem still remains the issue of having local servers on the continent of Africa to reduce ping time for players when they are competing at the global level.
Now, what is becoming clear is that mobile gaming is truly the future of gaming in Africa. While other African markets such as Kenya still lag behind South Africa and of course the rest of the world in esports, they are quickly catching up. And that's because they're now benefiting from more affordable mobile data and a growing market of young people with access to smartphones. But still, is Africa really ready for a boom in its esports space?
According to a 2020 GSMA intelligence report, Sub-Saharan Africa's mobile industry has largely risen to the challenges of keeping individuals connected during the COVID-19 pandemic. As of 2019, there were about 272 million mobile internet users in the region. It's expected 475 million to be connected by 2025. This means that almost half of the population is expected to subscribe to mobile services. However, some 800 million people still are not connected to mobile internet yet. Nevertheless, as the proportion of the population without smartphones gets smaller and smaller, gaming developers now have a greater opportunity to reach out. And they have the products. Nielsen Superdata Research estimated that mobile games generated over $60 billion in 2019, accounting for close to 60% of the video game industry's total revenue that year. Games and esports analytics and market research company Newzoo found that mobile revenues accounted for more than 50% of the global games market in 2018.
It is indisputable then that because mobile gaming is a strong contender in the video game industry, Africa is poised to grow its share in the global esports market, which pulled in over $1 billion in 2019. And some of the continent's most promising stars are in East Africa. Sylvia Gathoni, known as Queen Arrow, is Kenya's first female professional esports athlete. Ranking 13th in Kenya, Queen Arrow is the first woman in East Africa to be sponsored by a global brand.
What usually happens is that you get support in terms of apparel, in terms of payment for, if you need to travel for international tournaments, they'll cater for your trips. And, in return, you have to give your best in terms of building your brand and, being at the top of your game. I got signed to my first team, that's to say Exit Gaming. They're based in New Jersey in the United States. I stuck with them for 2 years until January of 2020. I joined a different team, but I left in July because I needed to focus on finishing university. Then in January of this year, I joined my new team, UYU, and I've been with them since then. I'd say it's a lot of effort, especially being from a region that tends to be overlooked in the gaming space. Yes, you can make money off of tournaments, and you can also make money off of, as I said, being an influencer in terms of making content on social media and on platforms like Twitch and YouTube. And stuff like brand endorsements also goes a long way in cementing your foothold as in terms of making a living off of professional gaming. Kenya is making that small but sure steps in making sure that gaming is a recognized, I'd say, and activity. But I feel as compared to the rest of the world, we're still lagging behind because we don't have these companies investing properly in the space as needed. If you compare it to a place like South Korea, we've even found that the government itself has, put incentives that make it possible for people to make living off of pro gaming. Here in Kenya, we haven't seen any incentives from the government because we still find that we are under a punitive tax regime that makes gaming an expensive hobby / career to get into.
The simple fact that Africa's esports space is now attracting investor attention means that it is game on for the industry. Investors are now looking beyond vibrant gaming markets like South Africa to growing industries like Egypt, Nigeria, and Kenya. And as the continent grows its competitive space, the prospects for the development and distribution of homegrown games expands even further.
That, of course, was Uche Okoronkwo with Tech Spot. You can, of course, keep tabs on that particular segment. Tech innovation stories come out of Africa on this program and on our social media platforms. Quick update on the currency side of things as we wrap up the program. So Kenya did secure a staff-level agreement with the IMF in its 38-month program. This is one of its more recent reviews, making it eligible for disbursement of $264 million after formal board review, of course. The next supplementary budget will focus on two key things: expanding the COVID vaccination program in East Africa and, of course, supporting ailing SOEs, including Kenya Airways and the power distribution monopoly, Kenya Power. That's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the content you've seen on the program. Many ways you to get your thoughts back to us, all of them on your screens right now. I'm Ramah Nyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thank you for your company in the last hour. The World Today is up next from Washington, D.C.